Seems that many groups in the news today call themselves Marxist. It could be Black Lives Matter, Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement, Redneck Revolt, or Antifa. Many others. So where did this begin? What paragon of virtue is this that people follow, or even worship 200 years later? Marxism is named after Karl Marx, born in Germany in 1818 to a very wealthy family. He was supported in his studies and obtained a PhD. When his father died, he was still living off an allowance and had never worked at a job. His mother still had 7 of his siblings to take care of, and money became tight. She cut off his allowance when he was 24. This became a lifelong issue for him, causing anger and resentment. To offset this, he married into a rich family, to a girl he never had an interest in. He lived most of his life after in extreme poverty. Although he had enough money given to him by various people to live quite well, he had problems managing money. And whenever he got some, he would blow it on parties and clothes to impress others. He had a maid given to him by his in-laws, but she often went unpaid. Eventually, she had a child from the situation. He spent the rest of his life living off loans he would not repay and donations from people. He would have editing jobs, but would lose them due to his lack of efforts. He hated the work, and he didn't feel as if he should have to. He called his jobs forced labor. He moved to England and started attending meetings with the Communist League. Contrary to what many believe, Marx did not create socialism. That had been around for decades with factions all over Europe. Karl Marx attended meetings and was asked to summarize notes for publishing. He decided to rewrite it all, deceiving the members into thinking the changes had been approved. He then took the mishmash of ideas and composed the Communist Manifesto. His most famous work was actually stolen material. He retained his bitterness and resentment for all people of wealth and felt they had no right to keep it from him. While many think he was a proponent of ending slavery, in truth, if you read journals written by his lifelong friend Engels, you'll learn that in private they had nothing but crude and insulting remarks for people of color. Marx was from a Jewish family, but he despised Jews and became a Lutheran. He had very dark skin and was nicknamed the Moor. He similarly hated people of color. He repeatedly referred to blacks as the N-word and would comment on how lazy they were. The notion that he influenced Abe Lincoln to abolish slavery is pure propaganda. Again, this is from contemporaneous notes written by his lifelong friend. Engels himself was a lifelong womanizer, and the game of conquest was always on his mind. He had relations with many married women and always sought to conquer the hard-to-get types. While living in England for the second half of his life, Marx was notorious for never bathing. He was often drunk and would go into tirades about how unfair life was to him, and how he deserved so much more if he hadn't been cheated out of it. His disregard for his own obligations was well known. He often would refuse to pay rent and would move from place to place frequently. He would use various aliases to make it more difficult to track him down. He would exploit people with no remorse. He would sometimes target widows and attempt to blackmail them into providing him money for his silence. His wife's uncle fell ill, and Marx began celebrating, thinking he would receive an inheritance. In those early days of communism, he was an inconsequential figure. He was disliked for his crudity, his odor, and his lack of contribution of ideas. When he had changed the charter, he did it to gain a leadership role in the group. When he became part of the international workers' movement, he again tried to use Machiavellian intrigues to gain power. He caused such a divide the group fell apart. He was paid to write a book called Kapital. On his death, Engels discovered that after many years, he had only written a third of it. Engels finished the book, writing the majority, although it's Marx's name on it. In fact, the Communist Manifesto, while mostly plagiarized, was also completed by Engels, and in that case, at least got a co-writing credit. The Communist Manifesto was never a serious work while Marx was alive, and it was only decades later it came into use. So who was Karl Marx? He was a man that was spoiled from the start. He felt the world owed him whatever he wanted. While he never wanted to work, he always felt the money was due to him. He resented others for their success and felt since they had it and he didn't, they must have it, stolen it, or obtained it by exploiting others. Ironic, since Marx lived off money he exploited from others. He was crude, filthy, and had no moral foundation. He had a decades-long affair under the same roof as his wife, yet denied the child born from it as his. His idea of Marxism were born out of his lack of desire to work and his self-entitled view of the world. He held disdain for others and despised blacks and Jews. Karl Marx was an angry, self-loathing man. He used everyone he met and was willing to prey on widows for money. His ideas were primarily stolen. He rarely paid his bills and felt he should not have to. This is the foundation of today's Marxists. Perhaps once you learn who the man was, things begin to make sense. It makes sense that people with the same motivation would idolize such a man. I will end this today by listing a few versions of Marxism. There is not one form of it, as it's a never-ending effort to find ways to make it work. They're still trying. Got Marxism, Leninism, left communism, council communism, Trotskyism, Marxism-Leninism, Maoism, libertarian Marxism, Western Marxism, structural Marxism, neo-Marxism, Frankfurt School, Marxist feminism, Marxist humanism, Marxist theology, autonomist Marxism, analytical Marxism, British Marxism, Austro-Marxism, Praxis School, De Leonism, Euro-communism, post-Marxism. There's many more versions. Don't believe a word I'm saying today? Read it yourself. It's there. I'll see you soon.